What's up, people? I'm Shaggy the Opinionated Hippie, and today I'm going to be starting to review and rank Rush's studio albums. I'm going to start with the 70s and go 80s, and then maybe combine decades after that as the numbers get smaller, not so as not to make a super long video. How did we get to Rush from Frank Zappa, since I'm looking to connect all things to Zappa? Not a lot of connections. They both exist in the musical world in which Cream happens. Rush covered Cream on that covers album they did. Both Eric Clapton and Jack Bruce have appeared on Zappa albums. God, God, I See God. They both have covered Purple Haze. So yeah, they both exist in the same musical world. Other than that, I don't know of a direct connection, sadly, between these two musical artists. The reason I'm doing Rush now is just this past weekend, I had a conversation with an old friend of mine, and we started talking about another friend of ours who passed away just under 20 years ago. He was a firefighter, literally died in a fire trying to save a family's life. Someone who I met in elementary school. I was there when he bought moving pictures back in junior high school. We went to probably a dozen plus Rush concerts together over the years. And so we were discussing him, and I was like, I had to go listen to some Rush. And so now I'm going to do this in his honor. And pretty much everything I'm going to say in these videos, he has heard. And if at any point I offer criticism, he probably heard that tenfold. So I dedicate these rankings and reviewings and rantings to you, Scott. But anyways, here we go. We got 6 albums in the 70s. I'm going to rank them 6 to 1. I'll show the list at the end, and then I'll combine lists as we go through decades. All right, that's it. Here we go. On to number 6. Number 6 is their third album, Caress of Steel. This came out in 1975. I don't think this is a bad album. This is their first real attempt to go sort of prog epic-y. On 2 songs, Necromancer, which runs like close to 13 minutes, the entire side 2 of the album, The Fountain of Lamneth, 20 minutes. And those both have absolutely brilliant moments musically, but they're both also kind of all over the map musically. And I'm not sure all the different pieces are very cohesive or fit. One of them, the Necromancer, has this like narrative aspect that doesn't really work, I don't think. But there's some really engaging moments in both of those that I definitely think make it worth a listen. They just can't compare to the other 5 albums in this decade. I think listening to something like later on this list, like something like a Cygnus, which also is kind of all over the map and also has some narration and also is like really indulgent. By that point in their career, 3-4 years later, they just figured out a way to make it work. And here they're just trying to still, tinkering with the ideas of these longer epics. So there's these 2 long epics. It opens up with the absolutely awesome prog rock, just Rush. This is the template of rock, Bastille Day. Phenomenal song, great riff. I Think I'm Going Bald. Not that bad of a song. Maybe some cheesy lyrics, but some good riffs, some good playing. And then sort of the lighter Lakeside Park, maybe going with a lighter kind of build off a fly-by-night pop type vibe, but still Rush and still got good energy, great lyrics. But yeah, not a bad album. I just think that in the 70s, it's probably their weakest, only it's because they're ambitiously trying stuff they're not yet ready for, but it's worth checking out, and it's not a bad listen in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, that's my number 6, Caress of Steel. My number 5 is their second album, Fly By Night. The first one that Peart was on. This came out in 75. And I know generally this is maybe ranked higher than their first one, but I absolutely love their first one. And while this has 8 songs total, I think 5 of them are kind of home runs and kind of perfect. And the last 3, when things get a little more acoustic-y, they get a little more that kind of proggy softness. I just don't think the last 3 songs kind of live up to the first 5 songs, which are all amazing. And so I think the first album's a little more consistent, but this has some fantastic stuff. This album whereas the first album sounds like hard rock, Zeppelin, kind of, living very much of that era, which is fine. I think they do a great job of it. And I think if those bands hadn't existed, other hard rock bands had not existed, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, to compare Rush to, then I think maybe the first album is even thought of higher. But this album is fantastic and clearly sounds like Rush. This is the first Rush sounds like Rush album. Opens up with Anthem, absolutely awesome song, just awesome riff, awesome energy, very much a prog riff rock type thing. Best I Can, nice tight rock song, very Rush sounding. Beneath, Between, Behind, awesome intro, reminds me of the Minutemen's Corona. Just sounds like Corona, only like a prog Rush version of that. So I'm wondering if Minutemen were listening to Rush and stole that. Corona was also used as the intro to Jackass. And this is kind of Rush's version of that, at least the intro is. And then you get their first real epic, just 8.5 minutes of By Tor and the Snow Dog, which apparently is about two real dogs and just like really harmless, simple dog daily pet action. But they've turned it into this absolutely epic battle. We get a 7-4 war in there. We get all kinds of really neat, weird, crazy riffs. Get a weird noise jam in the middle. Very prog psych. The Fray is awesome. What is the Fray? Wait, what is the Fray? Oh, that's the battle that they go into. Yeah, there's a Fray. They set up for the Fray, and then we go into the Fray. We just get this awesome actual jam on it. The end on the vinyl of this has this loop that keeps repeating, so it's one of those, if you don't, it'll play forever. I don't think they have that on the CD. I think it goes for like 5 seconds and then fades out. They maybe should have had it for like a first minute or so. Yeah, it's just really awesome, epic song. You got the spacey middle part. You got the crazy, epic proggy jams. Really indulgent, over the top prog rock awesomeness that just like, yeah, this is Rush, man. And then you get Fly By Night after that. And Fly By Night, just an awesome, catchy pop rock prog song. But I don't think the last 3 songs hold up. Making Memories is good, but it's got like an acoustic rock with electric, a little bit of both upbeat. Rivendell just doesn't do really much for me at all. That's sort of an airy, Rivendell from Lord of the Rings. And then In the End is kind of a longer, more indulgent piece, about 7 minutes. You got some acoustic, you got some heavy, slow stuff in there, kind of a little too gentle at times. But yeah, great album. But yeah, starts off stronger, finishes a little not as strong. My number 5, Fly By Night. My number 4 is their debut album, Rush, which also came out in 1974. Yeah, there's Led Zeppelin inspiration, riffs all over here. There's some Aerosmith vibes going on. What else do we got? We got some almost like a sort of a Midnight Rider, Allman Brothers riff going on. Some like attempt, not really ripping off that vibe, but kind of maybe a recycled riff there. So yeah, influences are all over the place. The opening track, Finding My Way, we even got some Robert Plant, like, ooh, yes, where you could swear it's Robert Plant singing vocals in this at times. So we're wearing our influences on our sleeve. Peart's not yet in the band. We have John Rutsey on drums, who is just fine, absolutely fantastic. I do think there's probably a multiverse where Rutsey decides he likes to be a rock star and stays in this band, and they have a career comparable to like an Aerosmith. And maybe they just don't go weird pop in the 80s and 90s. But this is some pretty good stuff. And even when they slow it down, fourth song, Here Again, is sort of this slower building in intensity, climactic Lifeson solo at the end. But it's just got this really, really awesome, great vibe that Rush would kind of get away from. I'm not really sure there's a song that feels like Here Again, just because doesn't go into like these weird prog areas. It just develops these flavors and lets them simmer, and then we get it kind of an explosive guitar solo at the end. Not sure there's anything like that in the catalog. We get In the Mood. Once Peart started writing lyrics, we don't got lyrics like In the Mood coming again. Hey baby, I'm in the mood. That wasn't happening under Neil. We just got some really, really good songs, some good energy, some good sort of Aerosmith boogie rock and roll, some Led Zeppelin riff rock, some slow stuff. We got a soft acoustic track that's kind of good. And then after 7 songs of kind of doing what everybody else is doing, but doing it in a rush way, we get Workin' Man. Come on, man. Workin' Man on their first album. Just and it's not the lead off track. I love that it's not the lead off. If it's the lead off track, you're like, wow, one of the best opening tracks ever. The rest of the album maybe fails to reach those heights because it is just such an iconic beast of a song. But because it's last, you really get a chance to enjoy everything else they do, and then they drop that at the end. You're like, oh yeah, man, I really want to hear what this band's going to do after this, what this next album, what album 2 is going to be. Because Workin' Man, just lyrically awesome, no peer involved. The riffs are ridiculous. The middle section, it's proggy. We're dipping our toes in prog. Yeah, man, absolutely fantastic, fantastic album. The only reason it's number 4 is because they went through a hardcore prog phase in the late 70s, and boy, did that phase pay off. All right, number 4, their debut. Number 3 is 2112, their 4th album, came out in 1976. The iconic Rush album, I think the one that made their name, the one that made them Rush. 20-minute opening suite, entire side of music, 2112. Yeah, it's the thing that put them on the map ultimately and made them Rush. It, of course, has one of the greatest Rush songs ever. Epic musically, epic lyrically, just everything about it is perfect. Of course, I'm talking about A Passage to Bangkok, also one of the greatest 420 songs ever written. I mean, that opening riff is just ridiculous. I don't need the that doesn't need to be there. We get the vibe, the feeling without that. But yeah, what a ridiculously great song. We also have 2112, of course. 20 minutes, 20 and a half minutes. Opens up with that awesome keyboard swell that comes in for like over 30 seconds. And just that, whoa, and then the bump, just sci-fi space prog rock, that galloping, almost like proto Iron Maiden type groove that they go into that keeps repeating throughout the entire song. The slow down, softer sections, the awesome grand finale, just everything about these 20 minutes. It's probably the quickest 20 minutes of prog ever. I'm always surprised when the song ends because it just seems to fly by night. Yeah, it's just a great song. And then the song that follows, or the first song on side 2, is A Passage to Bangkok. What a just ridiculously great 25 minutes of music. And then you get some songs which I think are solid, but maybe aren't quite as solid as the stuff on the next 2 albums. The Twilight Zone, some sort of nice pop rock Rush style stuff. We get Lessons, some kind of upbeat acoustic poppy stuff. We get the slow ballad in Tears. And then we get the thing that's most connected to 2112 musically, with an absolutely ridiculous guitar solo. We get Something for Nothing. Yeah, really fantastic. Absolutely great album. But I had to drop it at 3 just because maybe Lessons and Tears don't quite do it for me as much as stuff on the other ones, and I have to find reasons to rank these. But a fantastic album. And 2112 is just fantastic. And yeah, the only thing when I was a kid, when I first got into this album, probably junior high is when we first heard this, I didn't like the fact that like before, like some of the slower passages, the music seemed to stop and like restart. It really felt almost like they were just separate songs joined together. I got over that over the years, but I really wish the flow was more in line with something like Supper's Ready. That is, I think I'd also heard Supper's Ready for the first time around this time, and I liked the way those, what felt like disjointed pieces, were connected with these musical interludes. And I wanted Rush to do that. And maybe deep inside me, I'm still holding a little grudge, and why I put this album at 3, though it's fantastic. But yeah, my number 3, 2112. Number 2 is A Farewell to Kings, the second committed to prog album in their prog phase. This is the follow-up to 2112, came out in 77. Yeah, just a perfect album. Just the sequencing, the balance, the songs, the exploration of ideas, the bass playing, Yeah, everything about this album is just perfect. The balance of acoustic and electric instruments and the way the different parts are put together, and like the opening of Farewell to Kings works absolutely perfectly. The use of acoustic and Closer to the Heart, everything about Xanadu, the 11-minute epic that's on this album. We have another epic in Cygnus, which closes it out like 10 plus minutes. Primus covered this album in its entirety back in COVID, right? It was during COVID, I think, because I think they canceled and then rescheduled here in Texas. If you want to know why Primus covered Farewell to Kings, listen to Cygnus X1, Book 1, The Voyage. That is an overindulgent, has some like spacey, proggy narration weirdness, and you're like, okay, this is over the top. And then it comes in with one of the hardest, funkiest, greatest bass playing drum riffs ever that this band would do. They drop into all these crazy ideas. Cygnus X1 Book 1, I hear a little bit of like punk, post-punk Minutemen in there. Here's some Primus. Like Primus is explained in this song. That's why Primus exists, because of Cygnus X1 Book 1, which is one of the nastiest songs they've done. Just absolutely amazing. Opens up with Farewell to Kings, which is kind of all over the place. Also has a really awesome sort of bass-driven middle section. Xanadu, the big epic with so many phenomenal guitar lines and little different sections and the flow. And this is one of those albums where both in like the lead up into Xanadu and then also sort of the lead up into Cygnus X1, where the band's really taking their time and there's some patience in here. They're letting flavors just kind of simmer. It's not too hit. When they hit you over the head, they've allowed you to like not think they're going to hit you over the head before they do. So there's a lot of space on this album. I'll Get Closer to the Heart, which is just this awesome, almost anthemic, like just hold up your lighters type pop song. Cinderella Man, which has some nice, good, kind of radio friendly, almost all over the map rock energy, but it's really fun and kind of eclectic. Madrigal, which sounds like every song whichever it's been called Madrigal sounds like, but is sort of a necessary breather amidst all the other prog aggressive chaos on the album. And then the closing, Cygnus, is just a masterpiece, just absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, a really, really, really fantastic album. Kind of I think the sleeper, because it doesn't have the 20-minute epics as the one that precedes it and the one follows it has, but it's right there between the two, and it's connecting these two perfectly. Yeah, just phenomenal. My number 2, Farewell to Kings. Number 1 for me in the 70s is Hemispheres. This is their 6th studio album, came out in 78, the last of their really, truly dedicated to prog epics. I always imagine there was a conversation that went on when they made this album, and they were like, hey, before we give up prog and explore maybe more shorter song forms, you want to do one more 20-minute song? And they're like, yeah, let's try to do that. And then Peart was like, oh, I also found a way to throw some French into the lyrics. That should really bother some critics. And like, yeah, let's do some French. And then he's like, I also found a way to do like a political social allegory using trees. And like, yeah, let's do that too. Oh, let's do a 10-minute instrumental. Yeah, that'll really upset people. And they did those things, and they did each of them perfectly. I feel like this is just swag central. The opening side A, which is the 18-minute Cygnus X1 Book 2, Hemispheres, I feel like it just starts off. We just are right into like riff central. We're not going to like slowly bleed our way into it. We're just going to start dropping idea after idea after idea after idea. And before we even get to the lyrics, it's like, oh, I like they play like a riff or like some sort of musical motif. I'm like, yeah, this is the theme of this song. This is great. Then they abandon that and go to some other theme. You're like, oh, okay. They're bringing it up a little more and intensifying. This is even better. And then they're like, oh, no, wait, they're bringing it down again. Now we're going into, oh, no, like they're so all over the map. It's almost like it's a challenge. They're like, hey, how many different musical ideas can we throw in this thing before we finally get around to like actually singing the lyrics? It's kind of like 2112. You got your like different phases of the song. You go into some like a soft part in the middle. You end strongly. This has an even nice little acoustic ending at the end. Just beautiful, beautiful 20-minute song. Another one of those that just feels way shorter than it actually is. So many great ideas. The riffs are just like so memorable. There was like 6 different songs. They could have taken these riffs and made an entire album of absolutely fantastic songs, but instead they combined them all into one side of music, one song, one track. That's side one. Side two has Circumstances, got some French, Plus un chant, plus un méchant. Got just a great rock song right there. We got The Trees, the little great acoustic part that goes into like a little proggy rock part. We got a nice little like percussion interlude that's awesome and fun. I wrote a story in high school for my English 2 AP class based on The Trees, and I won like a high school award, beat out a bunch of seniors and juniors in a high school contest, got to go to this award ceremony, all based on inspired by this song. And then we close out with La Via Strangiato, an exercise in self-indulgence that is one of the greatest instrumental tracks ever. Even a little section called Monsters, which sounds like a cartoon. Monsters are gonna come get you. It kind of sounds like the soundtrack to a Looney Tunes song. Just a ridiculous, perfect album. Not a bad note, not a boring moment, not a boring second, not a bad choice. Fantastic. As a spoiler for the rest of this list going forward through the decades, this is the first album I ever bought. When Moving Pictures came out, my friend Scott and I rode our bikes to Licorice Pizza to buy Moving Pictures. And when we got there, Moving Pictures, which had come out about 2 or 3 weeks earlier, and Hemispheres were on sale for $5.99. I think retail price was $7.99 back then, but they were both on sale for $5.99. So we each bought one. I bought Hemispheres, he bought Moving Pictures. We went back to his place. We recorded them on cassette so that I would have a copy, he would have a copy. But then I took my Hemispheres home and listened to it way too much until I bought my next album. But yeah, this album it's pretty perfect, and it's a great way to end their prog phase, their hardcore prog phase. There would always be prog elements, but I don't think it gets the props because 2112 came first. I don't think this one gets the props, but I think it takes everything from 2112 and just it does it so much more confidently, just so much more. Yeah, it's a perfect album. My number one, Hemispheres. And that's all I got for the 70s and Rush. That's what they look like right there. Probably snapped a little too late. But yeah, pretty perfect decade. I mean, complaints about Crest of Steel are almost like they're too ambitious and just not yet ready to be that ambitious. But that's an awesome problem to have with the band. So yeah, great albums, great decade. Yeah, great band. All right, let me know your thoughts. Let me know your favorites. Let me know all that stuff. You know how comments work. Subscribe, like, share, comment, and go listen to Hemispheres, man, and just learn to love the greatness that it is. That's all I got. Peace. Talk to you later.